Most people believe speed is strength. The faster you react, the sharper you are. The quicker you respond, the more capable you become. This belief dominates modern life. Respond faster, decide faster, move faster, think faster. But no one asks the quieter question. What if reacting fast is the very thing that weakens you? In ancient China, speed was never trusted blindly. Masters observed something subtle. When a person reacts too quickly, they are rarely responding to reality. They are responding to disturbance, a tightening in the body, a surge in emotion, a sudden thought demanding action. Reaction feels decisive, but it is often automatic. And what is automatic is rarely accurate. The ancient teachers noticed this pattern everywhere, in combat, in conversation, in leadership, in moments of fear. The person who reacts first is often the person least present, because reaction does not arise from awareness. It arises from loss of center. This is the hidden cost of reacting too fast. You give up choice, you give up clarity, you give up yourself before the moment even unfolds. Ancient China did not try to eliminate reaction. They tried to understand why it happens. And once they understood that, they developed a way to stop it, not by slowing the world, but by stabilizing the human being. They began by asking a different question, not how do we act faster, but what happens inside a person just before they react? What they discovered was simple and unsettling. Every reaction begins before action, before words, before movement. It begins as a shift. Attention leaves the body. Awareness rushes outward. The mind jumps ahead of the moment. This shift is subtle. Most people never notice it. But once it happens, choice is already gone. Reaction is not a decision. It is a reflex born from instability. The ancient masters called this losing the center. When the center is lost, speed increases, but precision disappears. You may move quickly, but you are no longer moving from yourself. This is why reacting fast often leads to regret. You say things you did not mean. You act on information that was incomplete. You commit to directions that do not hold, not because you lacked intelligence, but because you were no longer present. Ancient China understood something modern culture forgot. Speed without stability is not power. It is a vulnerability. So they did not train people to slow down. They trained them to stay, to remain in the body when pressure arrived, to remain in awareness when urgency demanded action. Because when the center remains intact, action does not need to be fast. It needs to be accurate. And accuracy, when it comes from presence, always arrives at the right time. During the late Ming Dynasty, in a mountain school far from the capital, a young disciple named Wei trained under an old Taoist master. Wei was talented, fast hands, sharp eyes, quick mind. But there was a problem. He reacted to everything. A raised voice, a sudden movement, a critical glance. Before thought formed, he was already moving. During training, this made him look impressive. But during tests, he failed repeatedly. He attacked openings that were not real. He responded to feints as if they were threats. He spoke before the listening was complete. The master watched quietly. After one failed exercise, Wei approached him. "Master," he said, "I always act too quickly. How do I slow myself down?" The master did not answer. Instead, he asked one question. "Why do you believe speed is the problem?" Wei hesitated. "Because I react before I think." The master shook his head. "No," he said, "you react before you arrive." Wei did not understand. That night, sitting alone, he began to notice something unsettling. Every reaction was preceded by a sensation in the body, a tightening, a heat, a pull forward. He was not responding to the moment. He was responding to himself. This realization disturbed him. If reaction did not begin in the moment, then it was not the world that moved him. It was something inside. Wei sat longer than usual that night, watching carefully. A sound in the distance, his body leaned forward, a thought about tomorrow's training. His breath tightened. Even alone, even in stillness, the same pattern repeated. Something arose, and he moved toward it before understanding what it was. He saw it clearly now. Reaction was not speed, it was displacement. Awareness left the body and rushed ahead of experience. The next morning, the master called Wei to the courtyard. No weapons, no forms. "Stand," he said. Wei obeyed. Within moments, the familiar sensations appeared. Tightness in the chest, heat in the belly, an urge to adjust, to act, to do something. The master spoke quietly. "Do nothing." Wei struggled. Every instinct told him that stillness was wrong, that inaction was a failure, but he stayed. The sensations grew stronger, then unexpectedly changed. They softened. They lost direction. The master nodded. "You see now," he said, "reaction begins when you leave the body. When you stay, there is nowhere for it to go." Wei felt the truth of this, not as an idea, but as a shift inside. For the first time, speed did not pull him forward. Stillness held him, and in that stillness, he arrived. Arrival did not feel like relief. It felt like contact. Wei noticed the ground beneath his feet as if for the first time, not as an idea, but as pressure rising to meet him. The master watched without interruption. "Most people think stillness is empty," he said. "They rush to fill it." Wei could feel that impulse clearly now, the urge to move, to prove he was doing something right. The master continued. "That urge is a reaction wearing a quiet mask." Wei stayed. The sensations did not disappear. They shifted, spread, settled lower in the body. For the first time, he did not feel pushed forward by them. They were simply there. The master took a step back. "Remember this," he said. "You did not stop reacting. You stopped leaving." Wei understood the distinction. Reaction had always felt external, as if caused by sound, movement, pressure. Now he saw it began earlier, in the moment attention detached from the body. That night, as Wei returned to his quarters, the world felt unchanged. The mountain was the same. The wind sounded the same. His thoughts still came and went, but something subtle had shifted. Between sensation and action, there was now space. Not hesitation, not delay, space. And in that space, Wei sensed a possibility he had never felt before. He did not have to move the moment something arose. He could wait long enough to see what it was. That waiting did not weaken him. It anchored him. The training, he realized, had not yet truly begun. But for the first time, he knew where it would take place. Not in speed, not in effort, but in the space where he chose whether to stay or to leave. Ancient Chinese philosophy did not separate mind and body. They spoke of the center. When a person is centered, action arises naturally. When a person loses center, reaction takes over. The master explained it simply. "When something happens," he said, "do you feel yourself moving?" Wei nodded. "That movement is not response," the master continued. "It is displacement. Reaction happens when awareness leaves the body and rushes toward the outcome. Fear, pride, urgency, the need to control. All reactions share one trait. They pull you away from where you are. The ancient solution was never suppression. They did not say, "Do not react." They said, "Do not leave." If you do not leave the body, reaction cannot complete itself. Because reaction feeds on absence. This was the core insight. Reaction is not fast action. It is action without presence. The master let the words settle. Presence, he said, is not something you add. It is what remains when nothing is abandoned. Wei listened, still standing. For the first time, he noticed how often he was not here. Even while listening, his attention drifted ahead to understanding, to proving, to improving. The master saw it. "You are leaving again," he said gently. Wei returned to his feet, to the weight of his body, to the breath moving on its own. The master continued, "When you leave, you become early. Early words, early movements, early decisions. An early action is almost always wrong. The ancient teachers valued timing above speed. They knew that the moment reveals itself only to those who are fully inside it. Reaction jumps ahead and misses what is actually happening. Response waits not passively, but completely present. That waiting, the master said, is not delay, it is listening. Wei felt something shift. Reaction had always felt like strength. Now he saw it as impatience disguised as power. The master placed a hand lightly on Wei's shoulder. "Stay," he said. "Stay long enough for the moment to speak." Wei understood then. The center was not a place to reach. It was a place to stop leaving. And when the center was kept, action no longer rushed forward. It arrived exactly when needed, and not a breath sooner. That arrival felt unfamiliar, not exciting, not dramatic, quiet. Wei expected clarity to feel sharp, to announce itself. Instead, it felt heavy, grounded. The master noticed the change in his posture. "You feel it now," he said. "The weight." Wei nodded. It was not the weight of effort, but of presence. The master continued. "When the center is kept, the world does not pull you. You meet it without leaning." Wei began to recognize how often he had leaned forward in life, into approval, into outcome, into certainty. Each lean was subtle, but each one displaced him. Now, standing still, he could feel the difference. Centered did not mean rigid. It meant available. When sound appeared, it passed through him without dragging him along. When thought appeared, it surfaced without demanding action. The master spoke once more. "Reaction is always about elsewhere," he said. "Elsewhere in time, elsewhere in outcome. Presence is always about here." Wei felt the truth of that, not as an idea, but as a correction happening on its own. The center did not require guarding, it required remembering. Each time he returned to the body, the center returned with him, and with it, a patience that was not passive, a stillness that was not withdrawn. The master stepped back. "This is enough for today," he said. Wei remained standing as the courtyard emptied. Nothing special happened, and yet, for the first time, nothing was missing. The next morning, Wei was not given forms or drills. He was sent to stand. Feet shoulder width apart, knees soft, arms relaxed. "Stand," the master said. Minutes passed. Wei felt restless. Thoughts arose. "This is useless. I should be training." Then the sensation appeared. A tightening in the chest, a pull forward. The master spoke. "Do not fix it. Do not follow it. Feel it?" Wei stayed. The sensation intensified. Then, unexpectedly, it dissolved. No action, no correction, just completion. "This is the root," the master said. "Reaction survives because sensation is avoided. When sensation is fully met, reaction has no momentum." Wei practiced this daily, standing, breathing, remaining, and slowly something changed. The urge to move lost urgency, not because he suppressed it, but because it no longer demanded escape. With each day of standing, Wei noticed a quiet shift. The body began to speak before the mind rushed ahead. He felt the first hint of reaction as a ripple, not a command, a tightening that asked to be seen, a pull that asked to be felt. And when it was felt fully, it finished. No drama, no struggle. The master watched from a distance. "You are learning the difference," he said one evening, "between movement that escapes and movement that arrives." Wei understood. Reaction had always felt urgent because it carried fear of missing something. But when he stayed, nothing was missing. The moment was complete without interference. Standing no longer felt empty. It felt dense, full of information, full of timing. Wei began to see why the ancients valued stillness. Stillness was not the absence of action. It was the source of correct action. From stillness, movement emerged cleanly. From reaction, movement scattered. Days turned into weeks. Wei moved less, but every movement mattered. He spoke less, but his words landed. The master finally said, "You no longer rush to meet the world. The world comes to you." Wei bowed. He had not learned how to slow down. He had learned how to stay. And in staying, speed lost its hold over him. What remained was accuracy. And accuracy, the ancients knew, was the true measure of power. Accuracy changed the nature of effort. Wei no longer strained to be correct. Correctness emerged on its own. He began to notice this in the smallest details. When lifting a cup, there was no excess grip. When turning, the body did not lag behind intention. When listening, there was no urge to prepare a reply. Each action finished itself before the next one began. The master did not introduce new practices. Standing remained standing. Breathing remained breathing. But the quality of standing changed. Wei was no longer waiting for something to happen. He was inhabiting what was already happening. The urge to improve still appeared. So did impatience, so did doubt. But they arrived differently now, as sensations, as textures in the body, not as orders. Wei learned to recognize them without following them. The master observed one morning as Wei stood unmoving while a gust of wind passed through the courtyard. Leaves scattered, clothing shifted, nothing in Wei followed. Later, the master spoke. Stillness does not oppose movement, he said. It contains it. Wei understood what that meant. Movement no longer started in the head. It began on the ground, in weight, in balance, in timing. This was why standing mattered. It trained Wei to remain where action originated, not where it ended. And from that origin, nothing needed to be rushed. The training did not feel dramatic. It felt precise. And precision, Wei was beginning to see, was the only form of speed that never needed correction. Reaction feels necessary because it promises relief. Act now. Say something. Do something. But relief is not resolution. Ancient teachers observed, reaction shortens the moment. Presence expands it. When you remain present, you see more. Timing, context, reality. Reaction narrows perception. Presence sharpens it. This is why masters appeared slow, yet always arrived first. They were not late. They were complete. The masters were never racing the moment. They were inside it. While others rushed ahead, they stayed long enough to let the situation reveal itself. Reaction cuts the moment in half. It answers before the question is finished. Presence lets the moment unfold. And in unfolding, truth becomes visible. This is why reacting fast often creates more work later. Words spoken too soon must be explained. Actions taken too quickly must be corrected. The ancient teachers called this wasted movement. Presence wastes nothing. It allows hesitation without becoming paralysis. It allows stillness without becoming avoidant. The master once told Wei, speed chases certainty. Presence discovers it. When you react, you act on what you think is happening. When you remain present, you act on what is happening. The difference is subtle, but its consequences are enormous. One creates friction, the other creates alignment. This is why the masters could wait in situations where others panicked. Not because they knew more, but because they saw more. And seeing more always comes before acting well. This was the deeper lesson. Do not rush to end the moment. Let the moment finish itself. When it does, the right action will already be clear, not forced, not hurried, simply there. That clarity did not come from effort, it came from containment. The masters understood that urgency is not a property of the situation. It is a reaction inside the observer. When urgency appears, it feels external, as if the moment is pushing you. But they saw something else. The push came from within, from the discomfort of not knowing yet, from the tension of unfinished information, from the impulse to resolve uncertainty quickly. Reaction rushes because it cannot tolerate incompleteness. Presence can. This is why the masters trained themselves to remain with the unfinished moment, to feel the discomfort without converting it into action. They stayed with ambiguity long enough for structure to emerge. This was not indecision. It was listening at a deeper level. The body listens before the mind understands. A slight change in breath, a shift in balance, a softening or tightening that revealed direction. Reaction overrides these signals. Presence receives them. This is why reacting fast often feels confident at first and costly later. Presence may feel uncertain at first and decisive later. The masters trusted this delay. They knew that every moment has a natural point of action. Move before it, and you force the situation. Move after it, and you chase it. But stay present long enough, and the moment moves through you. This was their discipline, not controlling the world, not predicting outcomes, but staying intact until the moment made the next step unavoidable. And when action arrived from that place, it required no correction. It was already finished before it began. Weeks later, Wei was tested. A senior student attacked unexpectedly. Old Wei would have reacted instantly. This time, he stayed. He felt the ground, the breath. Then he moved. Not fast, not slow, accurate. The exchange ended quickly. The master nodded. "You did not react," he said. "You responded." Wei understood the difference now. Reaction comes from disturbance. Response comes from presence. That difference changed everything. The response did not feel dramatic. It did not surge. It did not rush. It felt inevitable. Wei noticed it in his body first. There was no tightening before movement. No pull forward. No need to hurry. The ground was already there. The breath was already moving. The moment was already complete. Action simply arose. The senior student stepped back, unsettled. Not by force, but by timing. The master spoke again. "Reaction borrows energy from fear," he said. "That is why it feels urgent. Response borrows energy from reality. That is why it feels precise." Wei saw it clearly now. Reaction tries to escape uncertainty. Response allows uncertainty to clarify itself. In reaction, you move at the moment. In response, you move with it. This is why response often appears slower, yet finishes first. It does not overshoot. It does not correct itself. It lands exactly where it must. Wei bowed deeply. For the first time, he understood that control was never the goal. Alignment was. And alignment could not be forced. It could only be entered by staying present long enough for the moment to reveal its shape. From that day on, Wei no longer tried to be quick. He tried to be here. And here, he discovered, was always on time. That discovery did not make training easier. It made it stricter. Because now Wei could feel the exact instant he was about to leave. Not after the mistake. Before it. A fraction of a breath. A subtle lean. A desire to finish the exchange. The master began to change the conditions. Attacks came without warning. From awkward angles. At inconvenient moments. Not to overwhelm Wei, but to test one thing only. Would he stay? Sometimes he did. Sometimes he didn't. When he didn't, the result was immediate. Movement became rushed. Accuracy thinned. Timing slipped. The master said nothing. He didn't need to. Wei could feel it himself. Reaction was no longer invisible. It had a texture now, a sharpness in the chest, a forward pull that wanted resolution. And presence had a texture too. Heaviness in the feet, breath dropping lower, a sense of space around the moment. Training shifted again. Success was no longer measured by winning exchanges, but by where Wei was when movement began. Sometimes the best response was not to move at all, and that was the hardest lesson. The master spoke once, quietly. Response includes stillness. Wei understood what that meant. Reaction cannot tolerate waiting. Presence can, and the ability to wait without collapsing inward changed how every encounter unfolded. The test continued, not to sharpen technique, but to refine location. Where was Wei? When pressure arrived, each time he stayed, the moment seemed to slow, not because time changed, but because perception widened. More information appeared. Distance, intention, opportunity. And when movement finally came, it felt less like a choice and more like the only thing that could happen. Training did not teach Wei what to do. It taught him when doing was no longer premature, and that distinction began to reorganize everything that followed. This teaching was never confined to combat. Ancient China applied it everywhere, in leadership, in negotiation, in family. Before speaking, they felt the body. Before deciding, they returned to the center. Reaction breaks harmony. Presence restores it. This is why their actions carried weight. Not loud, not forceful. Precise. In leadership, they did not rush to command. They listened first for what the situation required. A leader who reacts asserts control too early. A leader who remains present allows order to emerge. This is why their authority did not need to be enforced. It was felt. In negotiation, they did not hurry to win. They stayed long enough to sense imbalance in posture, in breath, in timing. Reaction pushes, presence reveals. When the other side moved too fast, they waited. When pressure rose, they softened downward. And in that softness, truth surfaced. In family, they practiced the same restraint. Before correcting, they felt the body. Before responding to emotion, they stayed on their own. They knew that reacting to disturbance multiplies it. Presence absorbs it. This is why their words landed without escalation. Not because they were detached, but because they were centered. Ancient China understood something still rarely practiced today. Harmony is not created by control. It is created by timing. And timing belongs to those who do not leave themselves when the moment becomes uncomfortable. This is why presence carries weight. It does not argue. It does not rush. It waits just long enough for the right action to become unavoidable. And when it arrives, it moves once and finishes. That restraint was not hesitation, it was calibration. Ancient teachers warned that most conflict does not come from disagreement, but from a mistimed response. A word spoken one breath too early becomes resistance. A correction delivered before the body settles becomes attack. Presence prevented this. By staying centered, they sensed when to act as clearly as how to act. In councils, they allowed silence to do the first work. Silence exposed who was rushing, who was posturing, who was uneasy with stillness. Those who reacted filled the space. Those who remained gathered information. This is why decisions made by presence often appeared effortless afterward, not because they were simple, but because unnecessary movement had been removed. In conflict, they understood a deeper rule. Reaction seeks resolution. Presence seeks understanding. Resolution ends situations. Understanding reshapes them. So they waited not passively, but attentively, until the situation revealed its own leverage. This is why their interventions were small yet decisive. A single sentence, a slight adjustment in posture, a pause where pressure was expected. These were not techniques. They were consequences of staying. Presence did not make them agreeable. It made them accurate. And accuracy, applied at the right moment, required far less force than reaction ever could. This was the silent advantage carried into every domain. Not speed, not dominance, but the ability to remain centered longer than others could tolerate discomfort. And from that center, action emerged already aligned. We changed, not slower, not quieter, more stable. When pressure arrived, he did not move first. He stayed first. Reaction still appeared, but it no longer commanded action. The master spoke once more. Speed without center is dangerous. Stillness without fear is power. Wei bowed. Those words settled not as instruction, but as confirmation. Wei felt them in his posture, in the way his feet met the ground, in the way his breath no longer rushed ahead of him. Stability had replaced urgency. He noticed it in small moments. A sudden sound. His body did not jump. A sharp remark. His chest did not tighten. An unexpected demand. His mind did not race to answer. Reaction still arose as it always does. But now it arrived as information, not as command. The master watched this change without comment. He knew the training had reached its quiet completion. Wei no longer tried to control himself. He did not restrain reaction. He did not chase calm. He simply remained. And because he remained, movement became trustworthy. Not rushed, not delayed, aligned. The master spoke one final time. When you stay, he said, speed finds its proper place. Too early is wrong, too late is wrong, but presence is never mistimed. Wei bowed deeply. He understood now. Power was not in acting quickly, nor in waiting endlessly. It was in being here long enough for the right action to reveal itself. From that day forward, Wei did not ask how fast he should move. He asked only one thing: am I still here? And if the answer was yes, he knew whatever came next would be enough. That question did not resolve anything. It did not give Wei peace. It gave him reference, a way to check before movement happened. In training, he noticed the smallest shifts: a subtle lean forward, a breath pulling upward, a tightening that once would have triggered action. Now it triggered attention. He did not stop the movement. He delayed nothing. He simply felt first. Sometimes action followed immediately. Sometimes it did not. And that difference mattered. Wei began to see how often reaction had disguised itself as decisiveness. How often speed had covered uncertainty. Now, when movement arose, it carried less urgency and more weight. Others noticed, not because he explained anything, but because his timing disrupted theirs. They moved early. He did not. They spoke to fill space. He waited. And in that waiting, situations shifted. Openings that were invisible before appeared on their own. Not forced, not created, revealed. The master did not comment on this. He did not need to. This was not a result to praise. It was a process still unfolding. Wei understood something quietly unsettling. Stability was not an achievement. It was a responsibility. Something that could be lost the moment he left himself again. And so the training continued. Not toward mastery, not toward certainty, but toward staying when the pressure to move returned. Because it always returns. You react too fast for the same reason Wei did. Not because you are weak, because you leave. The ancient solution remains unchanged. Do not slow the world. Stabilize yourself. When something triggers you, do not rush forward. Return to the body, to the breath, to the ground beneath you. Reaction collapses when presence arrives. This is why ancient China fixed it, not by teaching people what to do, but by teaching them where to stay. This is the part most people miss. Staying is not passive. It is the most active choice you can make, because staying interrupts the pattern before it becomes action. The moment you feel the urge to react, the tightening, the pull forward, the pressure to respond, that is not a command. It is a signal that you are about to leave yourself. Ancient China did not teach restraint through willpower. They taught return. Return before the word is spoken. Return before the movement commits. Return before reaction turns into regret. This is why their solution endured. It does not depend on personality. It does not depend on calm circumstances. It does not depend on discipline alone. It depends on location. Where is your awareness when pressure arrives? If it is in the body, reaction cannot complete itself. It stalls, it weakens, it dissolves, and in that space, something else appears. Choice, not forced choice, not a calculated choice, clear choice. This is why presence feels powerful without being aggressive. It does not push the moment. It allows the moment to show what is required. So the next time you feel yourself reacting too fast, do not judge it. Do not fight it. Ask one question only. Have I left? If you have, return. Feet, breath, wait. Stay there until the moment finishes speaking. What you do next will not be a reaction. It will be a response. And response, born from presence, is always enough. And when response arrives, it will feel different, quieter, heavier, certain without urgency. You will notice it first in the body. No rush upward, no tightening that demands release. No need to justify the action before it happens. Response does not announce itself. It does not argue for permission. It simply moves when movement is required and remains still when stillness is enough. This is why presence ends conflict before it escalates, not by winning, not by suppressing, but by refusing to be pulled out of the moment. Ancient China understood that most mistakes are not moral failures or lack of intelligence. They are location errors. You were not where you needed to be when the moment arrived, so the practice was always the same. Return again and again, not to an idea, not to a rule, but to sensation. The feet touching the ground, the breath moving on its own. The body is already holding you. This is the place reaction cannot survive. And this is why the teaching endures, because it does not ask you to become someone new. It asks you to stop abandoning who you already are. Stay and let the moment meet you where you are whole.